I'm Josh Cooperman, and this is Convo by Design with another road trip. This one to Alabama. Yeah, that Alabama. I do love sharing these stories from amazing creatives from locations where you might least expect to find them. Jeff Dungan is an extraordinary creative from and remaining in Alabama. Jeff has a gift for clean and modern designs with the framework of traditional architectural ideas. His story and path to architecture is special. His love for rural Alabama is strong, and I have come to learn after many years traversing this country of ours that you can learn so much from journeys along the roads less traveled. Many, if not most, pretty much all the design and architecture media doesn't really recognize or even pay attention to the design flyovers. And to be honest, that is to their detriment, because I enjoy covering it. So they can stay out of it. It's fine, which is also why you should settle in and enjoy this conversation with Jeff Dungan of Jeffrey Dungan Architects. A few announcements before we get into it, though. Are you enjoying the new content we rolled out so far this year? West Edge Wednesdays, the Convo by Design Icon Registry, Drinking About Design on Fridays, the Design Messengers on Mondays. I hope you are. The editorial team wanted to provide a more diverse conversation to celebrate some of the icons who have appeared on the show over the past 11 years, to learn more about what makes this business, this industry so special, to lean in on the changing nature of the design and architecture industry and collective communities. Not the business per se, but the rapidly changing nature of things and how that affects the industry overall. I hope these new brand extensions are providing some inspiration. Make sure that you are subscribing to the show so you receive every new episode automatically when they're published. We're going to get to Jeff Dungan. We'll be right back right after this. I am so proud of my partnership with Thermosol. They have been presenting partners of Convo by Design for 4+ years, and there is a certain amount of pride that comes with saying that the show is presented by the company that is the absolute best in the world at what they do. Thermosol engineers the most exceptional smart shower products and steam shower systems worldwide for a few reasons. They were the first company to design and patent the technology here in the US, dating back to 1958. Thermosol, a US-based manufacturer in Round Rock, Texas, employs an engineering team that designs, tests, and continuously refines the product. Their quality control team tests every single steam generator before it departs the factory. Who else does that? Nobody. I have the pleasure of working with some world-class designers and architects who tell me, and you know this, that the idea of luxury has changed, especially when clients want a spa-like bathroom. Steam is mandatory, or it's just not considered luxury. If you want to add steam, you have really one true option if you want the best, and that's Thermosol. Mitch Altman, third-generation CEO of this family-owned company of 65 years, continues to innovate the bathroom and shower space through technological marvels such as intelligent showering systems, sound therapy, aromatherapy, chromotherapy, technical interfaces, and so much more. And now, Thermosol, the industry leader in steam bath equipment and technology since 1958, is enhancing its already stellar family of products with the new indoor and outdoor luxury saunas. Available in 3 design configurations, each sauna is handcrafted from clear Western red cedar or Nordic spruce, inspired by the brilliance of Northern European sauna technology and design. Thermosol's latest collections offer luxurious features, and there's only one option if you want the finest experience: Thermosol. Check out thermosol.com and at Thermosol on the socials. You need some more ice? Well, it is 5 o'clock. Well, it's 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock where you are, right?
Well, I was already on one.
Oh man.
No, it's only 5 o'clock where I am.
We're on the same time zone. Okay.
Yeah. Where are you?
I'm in Tulsa.
Okay. Yeah. I'm on the central time zone.
Yeah.
We're at the very eastern bleeding edge of it.
So you're in Alabama. Do me a favor. Start back about 3 minutes.
Okay.
Tell me about growing up on a farm and learning about deliberate movements because it's funny because looking at your work, I think that's there are lessons, there's evidence of that in the final work. I'm just curious where that all emanated from.
Well, I'm not sure, but yeah, I think I was, growing up on a farm and being a young man, I was a little rambunctious, um, and and I was pretty slight of figure too. It probably took me more energy to move all the levers and the gears and the things that we were doing when I was younger. But I remember my dad telling me not to jerk things and not to just pull as hard as you could to do things with a measured action, and not to ever push the pedal all the way to the metal, um, with the machinery. And so that I guess you used a little bit of a steady hand, but not a too forceful of one. And I still have that. It's just one of those things, one of those little lessons that you get when you're a kid that just sort of make you a certain way. I still find sometimes that I actually need to use more pressure, to get something unjarred or unstuck, or whatever it is, that I'm actually being a little too gentle.
Are we talking metaphorically or physically?
I think probably a little bit more physically, although I think it definitely, my wife would beg to differ about
Do
how
you do
gentle
you
I am.
do you draw freehand?
I do, yeah, yeah.
You do.
I do it right there.
Oh
That's
man, I love that.
that's a good spot right there, isn't
That is
it?
a great spot right there.
All the light, and I've been sitting there all day, or most of the day, drawing today, which is a very rare um uh occurrence.
Are you like me? So you got the guitar behind you. When you're drawing, if you hit a spot or you get stuck, do you just sort of walk away, pick up the guitar, pick a little, and then go back to it?
Not really. I don't. I'm sure I get stuck sometimes, but not much. If I do, I might go to the bathroom. But the guitar is for um, just stress relief.
Mm.
Stress relief without you know being hungover. This is also a great stress reliever, but if you have too much of it, you might not feel good the next day. But this thing has like no hangover, like it's just all good. Your fingers may hurt a little bit.
What do you listen to when you're working or not working?
I do. I listen to different kinds of music during the day. I've gotten to where I listen to a lot of podcasts, which sounds kind of weird, I guess, that you'd listen to a podcast
Not
while
to
you're
me.
drawing.
Not to
But
me.
it's yeah, yeah. But I do. I like that. I like to. I don't enjoy reading, but I like to have things read to me. I like to learn, but I don't have the patience much to just sit down with a book. So I do a lot of books, audio books, and a lot of podcasts. And then, but if it's music, I kind of have three different. If I'm able to do it, I have about if I have the time to do it, and I'm not in meetings and so forth. I like to listen to classical music in the morning time. I love classical music. and I'll listen to that till about 11, and then around lunchtime, I usually eat lunch around 11:30. Um, I'll I'll sort of move on to some jazz, like old jazz, like from the 50s, not Kenny G or whatever. But no, don't shoot me, Kenny G fans, but I like the old, I like the old stuff. Um, and and then I'll do that for a few hours, and if I've still got more time, then I'll listen to, like, singer songwriter types that play music like that with lyrics that my wife says are rather melancholy. um I think I do kind of like some melancholy music.
You know what's really interesting? We've been at this for 10 minutes already. And one of the things that I find so unique and so interesting, oftentimes when I'm talking to some, I have a certain cadence that is way more laid back. Growing up in Southern California, I've always been more laid back. And when talking to creatives from specifically from like New York, Boston, Chicago, they have very little tolerance for me, and just because they want to get everything out so quickly.
Oh yeah,
You know
they're
what I
like a
mean?
machine gun, right? Like
Yeah. But this is, I'm trying to imagine that I'm a client of yours and we're sitting down and we're looking at a piece of property in in rural Alabama because you believe in designs that provide, I want to get this quote right, provide the spaces we live on give us a protected and intimate feeling in an uncertain world. And it's really interesting because one of the things that I was excited to talk to you about, I don't say this as a shot, and I think you will probably agree with me that most in the industry, out of the industry, when they think of high style, beautiful architecture, great design, Alabama is not the first state that people would think of. You laugh because it's true. Because look, I moved from Southern California to Tulsa to work on this design house project, and I get the same thing. There is some incredible architecture here. And I
yeah.
imagine that there is the same for you. And so I'm curious, growing up on a farm in rural Alabama, why architecture?
um it really came uh by accident. At least to me, it was by accident. I didn't, you know, nothing against people who always wanted to be an architect, but I didn't even know what an architect was. I love to draw, and and my mom picked up on it. My love for drawing. There was no computers back then, and we were living out in the middle of nowhere, and um, there was different ways to entertain yourself, but if it's raining outside and you're stuck inside, pencil and a piece of paper would do, and so I just fell in love with I didn't even fall in love with it. I just did it. I just love to draw, and so then she encouraged me to take some art classes, and my mom's the kind of woman that you don't say no to, and even though I did, and or tried, she said, no, I want you to do it, and and so she got me in some art classes even as a young kid, like, I mean, 12, 13 years old. I was taken from some a watercolorist who's actually really good. Like, you'd think, well, I mean, who you going to take art lessons from in a third world country, basically. And but there turns out that there was a really notable watercolorist, and he mostly had wealthy old ladies that he was you know teaching watercolor to. But then here I was, kind of over in the corner of the studio, and I found that I really loved it, and so then I started taking art at my high school, and I liked that, and then I got into another teacher who was an older lady, and she was teaching me oils and acrylics, and she actually was uh, contemporaries with Georgia O'Keeffe, and they were friends, and all this kind of cool stuff. So for just being out in the middle of nowhere, I got some good instruction, and I really fell in love with it. And so as I was getting ready to graduate from high school, my counselor said, well, what are you gonna, what are you, our school counselor, you had to come meet with her, and what are you gonna do with your life? And I said, well, I want to play professional football, but I really don't think it's going to work out for me. And she didn't even laugh. I thought it was pretty funny. And she said, well, you're really good at math. You're on like the math scholar bowl team, and you're an artist. So have you ever thought about architecture? And I think I said something like, is architect, is that who you go to when your back is out? She said, no, that's a chiropractor. It's like, oh, I don't know anything about that. And she said, well, you got to write a paper for your English class about what you're going to do with your life, and it's good as anything. So I was in my study hall, so I go back upstairs and I go to the library and I go through the Dewey Decimal System and I look up books on architecture, and I'm looking at like Frank Lloyd Wright, and, I. M. Pei, and glass houses and all these crazy. I was like, this is so bizarre. And I walk out into the hallway and I realize the building I've been in for 4 years is round, and I never thought about it. And the hallways are round, and all of the classrooms are little pie segments of the circle, with the library in the middle on the second floor and the office in the middle on the first floor. And I thought, this is just really weird. And so that was kind of the beginning of this journey that I've been on, but it was truly that random.
You know what's really interesting? I'm curious. The manner in which you explain it, it makes so much sense to me. But I'm wondering now, when you look back at that, around school is something that is uncommon, to say the least. But if you think
Yeah,
about it,
really, really
it
weird.
but if you think about it, it's almost the perfect shape for a school.
Yeah, it worked great. And, again, I had never even thought about it. It never occurred to me until that day. Just the design of buildings and the shape of them. And it was so cool too, because, in a round hallway, think about it, your view is always changing and you can never see to the end of it. It's always, and all the lockers and everything, were in the hallway, and you could only see maybe, a third or probably only 20% of the total of all the length of the hallways, because it was just always going around the corner, and the corner never ended. Anyway, I think what it did to me is it just sparked my curiosity about it. So not maybe just a couple months later, I took my ACT test to see if I could get into college, and there was a spot on there where they asked you what your major was, and I had no idea. I was 17 years old. I had no idea that you could say I don't know, and all I knew is I wanted to get off the farm and find a different occupation than farmer, and I put architecture. I was like, I'll figure it out. And Auburn University is one of the top 5 or 10 architecture colleges, year in, year out, and has been for a few decades. And I put Auburn because we're Auburn fans, and I put Alabama on there, but Alabama didn't even have an architecture program. Of course, I didn't know that. And so I get a letter from Auburn that says, we understand that you're an artist and we'd like to see your portfolio. So, I get my thesaurus out and I look up the word portfolio. And I said, Mom, I need one of those little plastic things, to put the things in. So we, get the portfolio. And I stuck like, copies and literal originals, whatever would fit in there, and mailed it off to Auburn. And then about a month and a half later, I think they sent me the portfolio back, and then they said, you've been accepted to the architecture program. I had no idea what was about to happen to me.
That's amazing. I am, I love stories like that, because the interconnectivity of things,
Yeah.
how you go from like one idea and someone's saying one thing,
Yeah.
and you that juxtaposed against what you know or what you think you know,
Yeah.
and that lays out the path for your whole life. Could you see yourself doing anything else?
No, no, 100%. I mean, the one thing that's become really clear to me, even through these bizarre, seemingly disconnected stories, is that God had a plan for my life. There's just no other way that I could explain it than to say, you know, there was there was a much higher intelligence at work in my life, right? That there's just no way you could explain it. I don't think any other way.
So once you get out of school, did you hang a shingle or did you work with
No,
and
I
for someone
worked.
else?
Yeah, I worked. I had worked for a really small firm here in Birmingham. Just as an intern while I was still in college, and I mean, really small, like 3 people, and but they were doing some neat stuff, and they were, among other things, they were doing some houses, um, and I got to and so I came back. It was like 1989. There was just, I mean, it was, the economy was in a terrible spot, and but people with lots of money and deep pockets were still, building houses, and it was a great time because, of course, they were getting a great deal because things were so depressed, and so I got to work on, directly with, 2 other people, the man that owned the firm and, one other guy, and so it was a it was kind of a deep dive, and I learned a lot working with them. This was cool. I still had some classwork left, but I was just tired and done with most of school, but I still had a little bit of classwork left. It was just elective classes, so I'd take these sculpture classes, and I meet on in my first art class. I was taking there in Birmingham and sending the credits back to Auburn. This really cool sculptor, artist guy who had a degree from Cornell in, wait for it, architecture, and he was amazing. He was like a force of nature, and he and I just hit it off. And so from then on, he said, when we're done with this class, I want you to call me, and I'm going to give you a class number, and I'm going to create a class just for me and you. And so there would be a class with one person in it. and me and this guy, I would build tables, I would make things for clients and stuff, and get credit, and I'd do that at night after I would, work all day. So I still kind of had, it was a good transition, because I had one foot in the real world, but still one foot in, metaphysical psychology and, philosophy and sculpture classes that had, one person in it. And it was good. It was a good transition for me. And then I ended up working with a much larger firm, and the guy who ran that firm was really a businessman who happened to be an architect. He didn't really want to do architecture so much. He just wanted to run a business, and he saw that I had some design abilities, and so he just started just giving me work, just my own projects. And I was like 25 years old, and I was doing YMCA's and AAA headquarters and churches, and then whenever they'd get a house, they'd say, here, just do this for us, like just kind of over there in the corner, like we don't even count this as a real project. I was like, oh my God, like, it's like nirvana for me. And I worked there for about 7 more years. So after about 10 years of being out of school and working for other people, then that was the point that I left and hung a shingle, as you say.
Do you do you still sculpt, woodwork, paint? Do you still work with your hands?
I do. I do, as much as I can. I had a really cool little studio set up in my a house a couple of houses ago, and I would paint, and I just give them away to friends and stuff. But just big, abstract pieces, 4 foot by 4 foot or stuff like that. I really enjoyed that. And I'd always paint with house paint. That was always fun to me. I'd always, just save buckets of old paint from projects and stuff and just use it. I just thought that was kind of fun. Just big, gestural kind of things. Um, yeah, I don't paint like I used to. I look at the things I did when I was 16 years old. I'm like, I don't do that. Um, but and I really love to weld and work with wood and stuff. So we're building a house, and in my new house, I think I'm going to get back into um, doing some more paintings and maybe get back into doing sculptures.
What's your preferred method of woodworking?
Um, I don't. I mean, I don't really. I like to use pieces of wood with things, and so it's more of a like an additive thing. I haven't done any wood sculpting, per se, but incorporating, little bits and pieces and shards into uh, paintings and sometimes, in the past, metal pieces was fun.
The reason I ask is because I got to fulfill a dream when we moved here to Tulsa. Obviously, coming from Manhattan Beach, had a little bit more room and got a chance to do some things that I had always wanted to do. I've been sculpting for years, um, and it's more like you say, just kind of putting things together and
Yeah,
seeing what fits.
more of an
So when
assemblage.
yeah, so when I got here, I started turning. I went and learned from these old guys who'd been turning for decades, and they got a club and a barn, and
That's
they
so
just
cool.
they got a bunch of lathes, and it's all they do is they sit around and talk shit and turn wood. And I just thought, you know what, man, that's what I want to do.
That looks like
And
the best therapy ever.
it's amazing. You know
Are you
why
making some
too?
bowls or just doing abstract pieces? What are you doing? Oh yeah, here we go.
So it's show and tell time now.
Exactly.
I I'm starting to do this new series. I'm calling the Upside Downs. So I found this guy who had some ash, and I loved it. But the challenge was I wanted bigger bowls. So I took the ash and I flipped them. So I carved out one,
Oh
carved out the other.
wow.
Then I put them together, and then I carved the bowl out. So and instead, like I could have taken the tenon out, but I thought instead of taking the tenon out, I wanted to leave it. So I
Mhm.
filled it in with plaster.
Oh wow, little kintsugi, but with
Yes, yeah,
plaster.
yeah. So that's the most recent one that I've been working on, and then I've also with the ash, I wanted to do the series of plates. So
That is so cool. That ash is hard as a rock, isn't
it
it?
is. I've been doing a lot of sharpening as well. So
Well, no kidding. They make baseball, like the professional baseball bats are made from ash.
oh, is that right? I did not know that.
Ash. It's one of the hardest, American woods you can get.
And that's also why this has been so much fun because being able to keep live edges and just carve into it
Yeah.
and it's physical. It's physical.
It's
You know what I
gotta
mean?
be.
Yeah. So I'm asking because for you, and I'm going kind of metaphysical.
Yeah.
I'm kind of
It's
going kind
a
of out there a minute, but
you can't throw me. I'm good.
because I work with wood too, it's one of those things where sometimes, like when I started this, I didn't intend for it to look like this.
Right.
I had an
That's the
idea,
best part.
right? I had an idea. This was not it, but I loved how it came out. So
Right.
with you, how does that change your perspective? So when you're sculpting, when you're painting, when you're working with wood in particular, and you do something, and sometimes maybe it's a mistake,
Oh
because you hit
yeah.
some, and it changes the nature, the shape, almost like a round hall where you one day you just look at it and go, wait a minute, this building is round. I never knew that before. And it changes the way you think about things. How does that change the way you think about what you do?
You just it's the best part to me sometimes is the accidental kind of nature or the apparent accident. that happens. And you mentioned it earlier, just something somebody says that just kind of comes out of the blue, and it's a different thing after that. You can't undo that. And sometimes I find I kind of end up on one of two ways. Sometimes I really appreciate it right off the bat, and I see it for what it is. Like, this is an amazing opportunity for this thing to just turn on a dime. And it's not that it becomes what I've learned is it's not that it becomes the opposite. It's just that you have to be willing to give up your control, that you had this idea that you were going here, and now all of a sudden you're being sort of redirected, or maybe to you it feels like you're being forced. But if you can sort of let go of that, but this isn't where I wanted to go, and go, well, okay, so it's not where I wanted to go, but like, let's just see where this goes. And if you can be that free, you can end up somewhere way better many times than where you plan to go. And then you also got a great story, right? Like, well, what happened is, I hit this, and then all of a sudden it blew out of the bowl, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's ruined the piece. And it's like, no, you idiot, the piece just showed you what it always had planned to be, and you just didn't know it. And so, it's kind of those moments, if you can sort of reinterpret that actually become the magical piece of it. And the stories are, some of the best part is how you got there, and people are like, no way, like, really? But that's the best part. And they all go, that's the best part of the bowl. And you're like, I know it's the best part of the bowl. Like, but it's not what I intended. But yeah, I went with it.
When it comes to your work specifically, now listen, I think it's fair to say, and I was looking at your map of work. Holy mackerel, you've been around.
I've
You
been
have
around,
done
like
you've done some.
I always think it's funny. Like, earlier you were like, so you're in Alabama and you're doing these, and I was like, well, actually, I'm not. I mean, I live in Alabama, and I love Alabama, and I love the South, but and I am Southern as it gets. But I really love to travel, and I really love to get to kind of spread the apple seeds across the country, and sometimes in places outside of the country. So it's that journey, and working in places where the building traditions are totally different from what they are in the Southeast, right? And the stylistic, the aesthetic understandings are different, and the materialities are all different, and they, all of those things, having to deal with all of that, and having to reinterpret as a Southern person, those things when I'm working in the Northeast or the Northwest or the Southwest, or, Canada or London. And, just understanding, or having to grapple with all that, and having to change and adapt how I think to the way the realities of life are in another place, to me, make me a much stronger architect, a much stronger thinker, because it's kind of like cross training. We've discovered this, in working out. Like, we're going to work, we're going to do some pulling exercises, and then we're going to do some pushing exercises, and you're working the same muscle, but you're working in different directions, and the sort of the synthesis of those things makes you stronger. And I think I've found that to be the case in the experiences that I've had working in Latin America, working in Canada, working in Britain,
Ireland.
Really weird places like California. I'm doing 2 houses in Manhattan Beach right now.
Are you really?
Where you're from? Yeah.
Okay. So listen, I'm so glad you said that, because I want to take that thought, and I just kind of want to connect it. Because where I was going with that, I had seen the map of your projects, and I was just looking, I was amazed that, not that you were all over the place, but that your projects were so spread out. Being here in Tulsa, I thought it was so cool, because I went and toured the Price Tower a few weeks back.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool. And when you think about Frank Lloyd Wright, you look at that, you look at his map, and you can just kind of see dot, 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 dot 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 dot. But it's not, yours is vast, and for someone to travel that much distance for work, designers, yes, but architects, I just don't see that often, unless they're Ramsa, or something
Uh-huh.
just massive.
Yeah.
But from an artisan standpoint, what I think is really interesting is, and the reason I kind of wanted to talk about Alabama is because I think that there's such a special nature to what you do based on your upbringing.
Hmm.
There's a purity to it.
Hmm.
I being from Southern California, I'm a Californian. I will always be a Southern Californian. I've lived in Texas, I've lived in Oklahoma, I've lived in Washington State, I've lived in Florida, South Florida. I'll never be a Floridian or an Oklahoman, at the end of the
Right.
day. And it was the way I grew up. And that was my love for architecture and design growing up in Southern California, where there was just this kind of ephemeral idea. Like, people would come in and say, I'm going to make this, and then they'll make a big brown derby, and then when they're done with the big brown derby goes away, and there's something else in its place,
Yeah.
right? And it's okay, because California, LA in particular, is this experimental melting pot. It's where all of these amazing ideas had come to fruition, because people had the freedom and the space to go in and try new things and something different. But those opportunities are not there anymore. Look, you're working on 2 projects in Manhattan Beach. I can tell you firsthand, the streets are narrow, the lots are small, the
Yeah.
city is strict, the neighbors are
Super
vocal.
crazy strict.
I was on the library commission for the city of Manhattan Beach, so I worked with city government. Trust me, I know exactly. Yeah, I know when you guys can turn their radios on, and that's never when
I
you can
mean,
start work.
seriously, can I go to the
Yeah,
bathroom? You know?
yeah, it's a thing. But what's interesting too is you have this sort of base, this southern ideal of sort of how you grew up, and maybe it's because you grew up over a longer period of time to learn who you are and what you wanted to be, where you could have gone to Auburn, War Eagle, and you could have then said, okay, I've done this, now I want to go work for somebody, worked for a year, then someone else for a year, then someone else for the year, then you hang your own shingle, and now you're doing your own thing. But you took the time to kind of learn the craft, to
Yeah.
learn the art. That path seemed, how did that starting the way you did and working in all the places that you do, where the rules are different, affect the manner in which you handle getting the job done at the end of the day?
I feel like you just asked me like 5 questions. I don't know
I do
which one
that.
to
I'm
answer.
sorry. I do that.
Um, uh, I don't know. I don't, I don't know. I think like a lot of us, and you just, you feel like you're just living a life, and you're doing the best you can, and you're working, and a lot of it's just blocking and tackling, and just X's and O's, and basic stuff. I definitely uh, didn't necessarily have a master plan for when I would start my own firm, but I definitely was fortunate that I got to work on a lot of different kinds of projects, even though they were all primarily, yeah, when I was working for other people, they were all in the state of Alabama. But I felt like at some point I had enough experience and enough of my own ideas about how I felt like an office ought to run, how you should treat employees, and how architecture could be done. Um, of course, I still didn't know a lot more than I did know, and even the parts I thought I knew, I think I found out I really didn't. I didn't know shit really. Um, and you know, it's like I sometimes tell clients this, and they kind of look at me funny, but it's the older ones get the joke, but it's like you know, I've done it wrong every way you can do it wrong. Um, but I think the good part is, as you make mistakes and you learn lessons, you try not to repeat those. painful parts. And so you make a point to get better, at that part. And then you create a process and you write it down on how you're going to do this, this, and this that will prevent, that kind of problem from happening again. And I think that's a big part of whatever success that we've had is we have a process that really works, and we have the right people implementing that process to pull it off. And I always hire people that are smarter than me, which is turns out it's not actually very difficult to find those type of people. But when you hire people that are smarter than you are, it proves that you're smarter than they are. That's what I always tell them anyway. So this is a team sport. It really is. I'm just thankful to be at this point in my career where we get to do some really cool stuff for some really wonderful people all over the country.
Well, and it's funny too, because you mentioned the 5 questions at once, and I do that on occasion, because at the same time that we're talking, I'm looking at some of your work, and I'm very frustrated by your website because
we're doing a new one if it makes you feel better.
Well, I'm frustrated because I love what I'm looking at, and I just want more.
Yeah, that's a good problem, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because there are certain projects that I'm looking at. One in particular kind of caught my eye. It's Alice Beach.
Alice, yeah.
Alice Beach.
Mm-hmm. Like Alice in Wonderland.
Okay, so it's just such an interesting structure. There are so many different influences there. And by the way, I also love the photography. There's this picture looking down on the pool. The pool?
I don't know which one it is. I've done about a dozen houses there, so I don't know which one you're talking about.
It's almost got like a Moroccan influence.
I call it Moorish. It's like
okay.
It is Moroccan though. I mean, I guess the Moors.
Yeah.
But there's this modern bit to it
that
right.
Yeah, and so as I'm looking at this and a few others, like there's a country farmhouse on there, that I'm looking at as well.
Mm.
There's a classic Southern influence, and there are modern effects to it. There's
I'm a closet modernist.
I was going to ask you about that. And because here I go again, asking like so many different questions, but because you've worked in so many different areas and you've been producing at such a high level for so long, with your clients, do you think that gives you a license to push them a little bit?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, look, I feel still way more like an artist than an architect, and at the end of the day, let's be honest, I'm doing houses for people. In terms of architecture and all the different aspects and types of architecture you could do, it's not the heaviest lift, right? I mean, we're not doing skyscrapers, I'm not designing, hospitals. These are single family homes. So,
you know what though? Science. You know what though, Jeff? I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to call you on that. I'm going to challenge you on that a little bit for one reason and one reason only. And I think because, and I'm not challenging you, I'm just saying, I think that since the pandemic, I can speak for myself personally and in talking to so many people, the idea of residential architecture and design has changed so much in the level of importance, because I feel like you don't really know what you want until you experience what you don't want.
Right.
And then it helps you clarify the things that are so meaningful to you. And with
100%.
the spaces that you create, and a lot of these are just generalities, but
No, I get what you're saying. I mean, basically, here's what I found to your point about since the pandemic, what's happened is the pandemic forced everybody into their homes. And suddenly people realized how much their homes didn't meet their real needs very well. And they were certainly forced, almost like if you think about your house as a person, and that's how I look at all of the houses that we do. They all my houses have a personality of their own, just like a person does. Um, and all of a sudden you're forced into this tight relationship with this other entity. We'll call it the house, but this, almost think of it as a person. And now you're having to take this 5 month long, 6 month long, 8 month long trip attached at the hip to this person. You don't even like the fucker. You don't even like, like, this is miserable. Like, and everybody is pissed, and they start to realize, holy crap, like, why did I even buy this house? Why, like, this doesn't work, the kitchen doesn't work, da da da. It's like, I bought this house because it was in a neighborhood I liked, maybe, or the price point was good, and I thought it was a pretty house. It was an impressive house, but it's not. But when you get past all those superficial things, the thing don't work, for me. And so it really created a huge aha moment, I think, nationally, for a lot of people. And think the result of that is, for one thing, we were just the busiest we've ever been in our whole entire lives for 2 or 3 years. And then as that sort of wave sort of melted away, people are a lot more in touch with what works and what doesn't work for them. And I think that makes them better clients. I think and hopefully it helps them, eventually, if they can get into a place that they really love and really does work for them, it helps them live better lives. And of course, that's what we do, is we try to help people live better lives, live the lives that they've always dreamed to live, where the house is, just in tune with their heartbeat, in tune with their breathing, in tune with the way they want the light to come through in the morning or not come through in the morning, the way they entertain, with family, or the way they cook, or the way they never cook. So, that I think it's made our clients a lot more caring and discernible and intimate with their homes, which is all in all not a bad thing.
it's not a bad thing. And I think too that the conversations are happening more readily, like we're having here. I was reminded when I was touring the Price Tower up on I think it's the 19th floor, which was Price's office. That's where his executive suite was. And it's the funniest thing. I'll send you a picture if you want to see it. But so you walk in and the building kind of like goes like that, and everything gets smaller as you get up towards the top of it.
Yeah.
And
it tapers.
Yeah. And
it
Frank
truncates.
It really does. And Frank Lloyd Wright was all about making small stairways and hallways anyway. So you get up to this executive suite, and then you've got this major office where his office was. And then just outside of his office, you had his secretary's office. And I remember, this will forever stay with me, because it was I learned a lesson. Mm-hmm. You walk in, and the way that Frank Lloyd Wright designed his secretary's workspace, she could look over to the right to see into Mr. Price's office. And then she would look straight ahead where her typewriter was. And then over to her left, she's looking into Mr. Price. Straight ahead's her typewriter. Over to the right was this glass wall of windows, probably about 8 or 10 feet high, except where there was a wood partition built into it, just overhead high level, so that she couldn't look out the window when she was supposed to be working.
Ultimate control.
No other reason except that she could not look out the window while she was working. And it made me think about things. It's like, that I had a previous life as a, in working in broadcast, and when you do radio sales and marketing in radio stations, you spend a lot of time in a cubicle. Those were not meant for people. Those were not built for people. Those, those were not, and it, you're treating people like farm animals. Basically, they have their own little pen. You know what I
It's
mean?
a cell.
It is a cell. But if you look at many homes prior to the pandemic, that's kind of how home offices or dens. They didn't really have home offices. They had rooms that were something else and then converted. I feel like the pandemic gave license to creatives such as yourself to say, hey, you know what? Now you can finally listen to me because I'm telling you, you want it to work. Let's think differently about this. It feels like a renaissance.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really into your question 3 questions ago when you were asking about, pushing, so to speak, the clients, and because I really considered myself more of an artist, in that way, than an architect. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, at the end of the day, I'm going to design a house. We're going to design a house together, but I don't. I think there's an intuition and in some ways an emotional connection that I want for the client to enjoy with that house. And I just don't think you can get there in a really in a totally linear uh, mentality, right? There's got to be this creative, more artistic, experience that takes place, especially with me, and the client. But I tell them all, I don't try to trick them into it. I tell them what I'm doing, up front. And when we go, the way I design, we set up a time and I go and meet with them on the property. Usually, my wife Lindsay and I will go and we'll meet with them. We'll get in, that evening, and we'll just go. We won't even go to the site. We'll just go have dinner and drink a bottle of wine and get to know each other more. And then we'll go to the site in the morning. And then I'm like, okay, you said, these are all the things to your program. These are all the things that you want. Look at this piece of property. Here's the sun. Here's the topo. There's the view. Here we go. And I just lay it all out right there with them over a day and a half. And so there's no, I don't like go away into some dark room for 3 weeks and come back with this big presentation and hope they like it.
Do you get involved in the interiors as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I can design a house with one eyeball tied behind my back, but the interiors is where the rubber meets the road. I spend 5 times longer designing the interiors of our projects than I do on the architecture. So short answer, yeah.
Do you have a preference as to which you like better?
No, I love all of it because it's all the same thing to me. The inside is just a more intimate picture and a more emotional experience that began when you crested the hill and saw the roof line. It's the same story. I'm going to keep telling you the same story, but it's just a always more intimate story. I mean, it's just like having a romantic relationship with anyone. You meet them, you look at them. There's some kind of physical attraction. But then you get to know them more and more and more, and it's like that with the house. Like ultimately, there's this really intimate relationship that you have. But if you zoom out from that, there was all those moments that led up to that, and it's the same way to me from the time you lay eyes on the house to the time you're enjoying a cocktail or cooking in the kitchen. But it's the same thing. It's all the same thing.
I can tell that you love the work. Is there anything in particular that you would like to do next that you haven't had a chance to do?
That's a great question. I'm starting to do something I've always wanted to do. I'm teaching. So I'm teaching here in Birmingham at Samford University, architecture and interior design. And I have really enjoyed that. I've really enjoyed just the purity of, young people and not having to deal with budgets or, clients or codes or any of that kind of stuff, and just really thinking about form and shape and space and, all those wonderful things. That's been really, really, really fun for me. I think I'll hopefully, as I get a little bit older, I don't really plan to retire ever, but I'd like to get more back into what we touched on earlier, the painting and the art part that really kind of got me into this crazy stuff to begin with. But no, I mean, I love the work that we're getting to do, and it's I say it all the time. It's I still complain, but it's mostly good to be Jeff Dungan.
You know what? And that's a mic drop right there. That's a perfect place to wrap. Jeff, I cannot thank you enough for doing this. Thank you.
I really enjoyed talking to you, Josh. It was fun. I know we didn't know where this was going, but that almost made it more interesting, didn't it?
Well, it's funny. I'm not gonna share too much here while we're still recording. Just if you're listening, just know this. We're doing a series called Drinking About Design, and Jeff's going to be on this, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of fun. This is going to be great. Jeff, thanks for doing
Look,
this.
I finished my bourbon.
Design Hardware's newly remodeled showroom is where you will find a gallery-style space with a thoughtful display of products, purposefully positioned to allow unbridled exploration and discovery. High-end faucets, luxury tile, natural stone, wood floors, and bespoke hardware selections are presented in a holistic manner, strategically arranged to stimulate creativity and transition your vision from the conceptual stage to a fully realized space. Conveniently located, free parking available. Stop by to find your inspiration. Collect samples, get expert advice, and tackle everything on your shopping list all in one place. Visit them online at designhardware.com or in the real world, 6053 West 3rd Street in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Jeff. What a great chat. I do hope you can hear why I love doing this so much, and this is why it is so rewarding for me to share these stories with you. Thank you to my partners and sponsors, Thermosol and Design Hardware, for your continued and unwavering support of the show and the design community. For more stories like these from the design community, please make sure you are subscribing to the podcast so you receive new episodes automatically when they're published. That way, you never miss an episode. Convo by Design is available everywhere you find your favorite podcasts. We're also on Instagram, and hopefully you're following along, Convo by Design with an X. And keep the emails coming, convobydesign@outlook.com, with show suggestions and guest ideas. I love them, and I appreciate them, and I love hearing from you. Thanks for listening. Until next week, be well, and take today first.